Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar. Today, we're going to be discussing expanding into new markets. Here are the essential business practices for you to consider. Today, I'm joined by two experts in e-commerce, experts in helping brands expand internationally. So before we get into introductions themselves, my name is Mike. I'm the UK country manager at ShipStation. We're a web-based order management and delivery management platform. We help merchants of all different shapes and sizes ship domestically and internationally, and we'll go into some of the things that I know and we've learned about how to help brands manage some of those international hurdles today. But over to you, Max, an introduction.
Thanks, Mike. So yeah, my name is Max. I've been with Lengow now for almost a half a year. I expertise notably on the e-commerce side of things and connecting companies onto different marketplaces, allowing them to go cross-border. I also do have a background when it comes to acquisition channels such as Facebook and Instagram, and hopefully with my information and my knowledge, we'll be able to get you guys going. But real quick about Lengow, we are a product feed management solution and a marketplace integrator, allowing companies to go cross-border.
Thanks, Max. And Mark.
Yeah, thanks guys for having me. My name is Mark Carpenter. I head up our partnerships at Avalara, really helping businesses that are selling internationally, selling cross-border, really manage the complex world of VAT, US sales tax, and the various other sort of tax types that they'll come across. And, I've been in this space for a while. I spent the last 8 years at Avalara with the ever-changing world of tax compliance. And previously, I was also at Amazon as well. So I've seen a lot of this from the other side in really sort of helping businesses and the opportunity that they have with entering new markets through new channels to grow their own business.
Thanks, Max and Mark. So as a bit of an agenda today, we'll take about half an hour to run through some different points that we've discussed. I think that we will kind of maybe go off some tangents, but there's definitely some key takeaways that we want all of you on the call today to kind of come away with. We also have time for Q&A discussion. So with any Zoom, feel free to put questions in the chat. We'll do our best to answer them on the call. If they're very specific to one particular company, then we may just take that offline and answer it directly. But feel free to put any points in the chat throughout the call, and we'll answer from there. So to kick things off, and we'll start with you, Max. What are the most important factors a brand should decide for launching a new market?
Good question. Good question. All right. So let's kick things off, first of all, with the basics. All right. First questions I have for you guys that you should be asking yourselves in your company is, do you guys already have existing international customers? Okay. If you do, where are they based? And you definitely want to leverage those people who already know your brand. All right. And to know where they are. Also, you need to understand if there's a demand for your products in the market, but also take into consideration that some of those cultural products that you might be selling might not match necessarily into a new market, okay? Also, next thing to take into consideration, are there local competitors? And if so, how many are there? People, ask me the question, how can I do a quick competitive analysis? What I definitely suggest is going on to likes of Amazon or an eBay and seeing if you can find products that are similar to yours, to see if there are active competitors in that market, okay? Next question I got for you guys as well is how can you leverage communication and acquisition channels for you guys to quickly gain consumers, all right? So where really is the first place that your customers are shopping in that market? If you have those general products, right, nothing that kind of fits over a real specific category, definitely go ahead with the general marketplaces like Amazon or an eBay. But don't forget that there's actually marketplaces that are not Amazon or eBay and have a huge market share in that local market. I'll give you an example. In Poland, Allegro is like king. They actually are challenging Amazon, to kind of have a hard stop when it comes to Amazon entering into that company. Into that market, excuse me. But this is something that should not be overseen. Allegro is huge in Poland. Also, I got eMag, for Eastern European countries such as Romania, Hungary, Bulgaria, and Dot, right? Dot for Portugal. And I've never heard of these local companies, these local marketplaces before. But, when you do your research, these guys are seen everywhere, and most of your local your local customers in those markets are shopping on these marketplaces. Now, on the contrary, social acquisition channels, they're going to complement your omni-channel strategy for sure. They're going to drive people to your website, okay? But those Facebooks and Instagrams actually don't go across every market. For example, China, they're not using these. They're using WeChat, they're using Baidu, okay? So you need to also take into consideration which social channels are being used in that local market. And of course, what are the age brackets you're looking to market to? Because now we're seeing a differentiation between different acquisition channels for different age groups, okay? So really, before creating a strategy or plan, it really is vital for you to select the right market for international expansion. Optimize your resources and target a few, okay? Select markets with the highest business growth potential, all right? That's why it's really important to be connected maybe with a feed manager such as Lengow, which helps really companies to get connected already with all the marketplaces, and it becomes very easy and quick for you just to get live onto that marketplace for you at least to start testing new countries, all right? But let me just make a recap. Target the right market by determining the market potential, establish positions in terms of your value and pricing, and last but not least, identify the right marketing channels. That's all I got on my end.
Thanks, Matt. So lots and lots of research, talk to lots of people, and engage with Lengow if all else fails. Mark, do you have anything more to add?
Well, just on the tax side, there's a lot less room for trial and error. Guesswork doesn't really work. You're either right or you're wrong. And as you're looking at new areas, new countries, new marketplaces as well, just think through the tax obligations and think like import VAT, how it's going to affect trading in that area. You might have a UK EORI number. There was a lot of talk about that at the beginning of the year after Brexit, but you also need an EU one as well. So make sure you've got these in place. And then look at tariffs and avoid double tariffs. This is where you're importing goods into the UK, but then you're shipping and selling them on a marketplace, maybe in Europe, and then you're paying duties to get them in, and again import VAT to sort of export them as well. Just make sure you're not sort of getting overly tariffed on those, and maybe change your business practice to cope. And then with all your items, existing and new items, make sure they're classified correctly with a commodity code, so HS codes as well. That's an important part as expanding and trading internationally. And then there are some things that you can really benefit from, certainly when it comes to sort of cash flow management. Look at whether postponed accounting or those type of areas really benefit as you expand. And I think to summarize that, it's really about taking time to learn. Once you've decided on your markets, once you've decided on your marketplaces, really look at the implications around tax and what works for you.
Thanks for that. So research on the tax side, there's a lot to consider, sure. I think we have it a lot with our customers who are definitely looking at shipping internationally. I think from my perspective, it's research in the local market, as Max said, but don't forget to speak to those customers. If you can travel or if you have contacts in the market, get out there, speak to people. How do they buy? Where do they buy? Where's there a gap in the market? Is there a gap in the market for your product? I mean, there's not always, there could be a massive nascent competitor, but really maybe that's not the opportunity for you. Maybe the cost is too high to import that specific product internationally. I mean, we find it as a business ourselves, looking at new markets to grow into. I think for our e-commerce merchants in particular, for example, is the cost of shipping a low value product halfway around the world even going to be worth it when you cut back and really look at the bottom line? I think from a specifically shipping perspective, I think it's important to consider the delivery expectations for that market. We found it when launching our French product. Lots of French consumers like the Pudo option, pick up, drop off. Buying from pick up, collecting products from pickup points, or going in store and collecting products. And actually, that might affect how you package your product, where you might sell it, and which carrier you might use for shipping that product out. A lot of this you can't always get from just research, Googling. I think you really you can't underestimate the value of speaking to someone who lives and breathes and buys in that market, someone who's actually a buyer of, the end consumer, who knows actually, what's expected. But moving on, so let's say you're going to sell, you've made that decision, there's a market opportunity, and your product, whatever it is, it's worth selling. But Max, if where should they sell the product? What factors the brands, what should they consider on actually physically, what technology platforms they should use to sell their product?
Great question, Mike. So yeah, you guys have already, fine-tuned and decided which countries or which markets you want to go to. Now the question is to think about which marketing and sales channels are you going to put your products on, okay? Just to state this out, consumers really do trust marketplaces, okay? And they're more likely to purchase your products on these renowned sites. Though, despite their stringent requirements, to get you on a marketplace, they really do allow retailers and brands to reach millions of the potential clients. So, a good strategy really is to start with the global marketplaces in order for you to test different products in several markets. Amongst those, you'll find the Amazons and the eBays. But as I said before, guys, do not overlook those local players, okay? In niche marketplaces, they're dominant in several national markets, such as ASOS in UK, all right? Zalando in Germany. In the French one, when I came here, I never even heard of Cdiscount, Fnac, La Redoute. These are great marketplaces which have so much traffic. I remember the other day I asked someone, where should I go get a new mirror for my room, right? And someone immediately said Maison du Monde, right? So these are things that you need to take into consideration. It's not just an Amazon and eBay. Those might be good for you to test out, but do your research. And like Mike was saying, talk with some local consumers to see where your product actually might fit properly on one of those large marketplaces in the market. I got an example for you, right? A shoe brand will really not see many sales if they're just going to put their products and all their eggs in Cdiscount. Okay, they're really not. You need to diversify up a little bit. And actually, Lengow, we did a recent study on a specific shoe brand where they're managing multiple feeds with different strategies for each market and channel. And I think this is going to be a great one to share with our audience today. Right now, they are active on 20 different European countries. Okay, 80,000 orders per year, and an average basket size of about 145 euros. Okay, those are just the basics, right? How are they achieving this? What did they do? Now, the strategy behind it actually is that they have a part of their collection reserved exclusively for the online store. Okay, this is going to create some type of interest for someone who's on a marketplace and sees your brand, and they're going to say, okay, well, I got the brand. I see what they're putting on the marketplace. Let's go see what maybe they have also on their own e-commerce website. And I see that, consumers are saying, okay, I just want everything to go on the marketplace. Really, I challenge that and say, why? What's the need for you to put everything on one marketplace when perhaps you can create that exclusivity factor of or interest and get people to go onto your website and see all your other products. So think about that. Now, let's get back onto that shoe brand, okay? Latest models, they're putting it on Zalando. Because Zalando is a fashion website, they want to use and leverage Zalando as a showcase to acquire the best, consumers who are looking for a new trendy brand, all right? Now, they're also, leveraging perhaps a clearance or liquidation of their stock from a previous season on a discount or a flash sale website called VP, okay? This is going to acquire shoppers who are looking for a discount. And then if there happens to be some stock remaining, or maybe the basic simple models, they'll go ahead and send that on Amazon, right? And you might be saying, okay, Max, but Amazon's really not a fashion and apparel website or marketplace, excuse me. But actually, I challenge that as well, because recent studies show that Amazon does have good fashion retailers who are succeeding. It's just depending on how they put their message out on the marketplace, okay? Why is Amazon actually good? Let's look at the basics. It's easy, it's convenient, we trust the brand, and it's quick delivery. So there are good things for you to leverage from Amazon, even if you are a fashion and apparel designer brand. But you need to think about all the different local marketplaces that you can leverage depending on your different business strategies. That's all I got to say on that one, guys.
Absolutely, Max. We actually had one that really surprised me the other day. It was Vivienne Westwood came in to sell on eBay. And not traditionally a brand that I would have associated with selling on eBay, but it really shows that there is a market for buying, higher end fashion goods on marketplaces and not necessarily a traditionally high fashion marketplace. So it goes to show, just because traditionally that wasn't the case, it's not. There is a customer base that buys other things there. So why would you not take the opportunity to put that product up where there's an option? We get it pretty regularly. We have an API first product that powers marketplaces for shipping, and we have all sorts of brands, especially during the pandemic, that contacted us hoping to use our carrier integrations for powering marketplaces for really, really niche products, CBD focused marketplaces, farm goods focused marketplaces, all sorts. So I think from an internationalization perspective, try and find those niche marketplaces that fit your brand's niche. Have a look, and it's pretty obvious, really. The more places the way you can put your product, you have more opportunity for customers to go and buy that, which will really help power your success in that new market. I think kind of building on that, assuming that customers have taken the decision to go on a new marketplace, go international, try and sell more product. What can customers, or what can retailers do to ensure that they continue to build on success or really gain success when they've entered when they've launched in that new market, Max?
Yeah, I'll definitely tie into that one. I got one statement for everyone who's watching us right now. Okay, think global, act local. All right. People do want to shop cross-border, but they just don't want it to feel like cross-border. You know what I'm saying? You need to research about the market, but what research do you need to do? And actually, I got a good list that we're gonna have the other speakers kind of tie into here and there. But let's just take the example of Europe. Okay, there's 24 different languages. There's different regulations when it comes to logistics, customs, taxes. Okay. Different currencies. So 19 out of the 27 EU member states are in the Eurozone, which actually means that 10 of the countries are not using the euro. Different cultures. We don't even need to go into that one. Okay. There's a preference in local or global channels, as we've just been talking about before. The payment methods. Actually, people are changing the way they're paying for products online. We're seeing that, in Germany, they're preferring a PayPal or a cash on delivery, or even paying, through 3 times installments. All right. But I'm actually going to deep dive into a kind of a nice big checklist for you guys to ensure you're doing all the best practices you can do when entering into a new market. First one, I love this topic, vocabulary. All right. Here's a general example. Coming from the States, right? We say pants. You guys, you're saying trousers. Okay. Imagine you using a Google Translate. You might have a total different vocabulary word that's coming across, and people might look at you and say, okay, what the hell is this guy selling? All right. So, you need to think that slang really does play a part, and you can't just rely on a Google Translate. Okay. Contact info. So having a local email, a local physical address, local phone number, without the extra fees, of course. But that's kind of plays onto the part when I said, do cross-border, but don't make it feel like cross-border. So when someone goes on your website and they see your brand on a marketplace, or they go onto your website and your website asks them, prompts them to go into their local language. What a great feeling. I've had to live in different countries, and it's like either they haven't translated it, and I'm just like, well, damn, I'm kind of lost, and I want to buy something from them, but I don't really know what I'm buying. And it really helps, for someone to see that they have a local email address with the with the .co.uk or the .fr. That really makes a difference. Having a local physical address, it really does play a difference. But that also ties into my next point, operating hours. So are you able to provide customer service in the local language in which you're going into? I believe that there are, marketplaces that demand for you to have customer support in that local language. So this is something you need to take into consideration. All right. But also indicating the appropriate hours based on that local time zone. Okay. Measurements, next topic. So, UK and US, we're kind of on our own thing when it comes to the measurements and what we do with inches, but that doesn't mean that the rest of the world is using this. So you need to take into consideration that, different countries are using different measurements, okay? Shoe sizes, waists, you name it. Next one, and this is such a huge topic that I'm seeing that a lot of brands are skipping over when I'm challenging about their strategies when going to cross-border. It's holidays and events. Okay, yes, Black Friday is the big one of the year. Then you have Christmas. That's standardized across the world. But did you know that there's actually specific sales periods in markets? For example, we're in the midst of summer sales right now in France. And before coming to the country, I didn't even know that there's this whole almost 2 month period of almost like liquidation percentages. Also in January up until February, there's this whole winter period of sales after Black Friday. So think about that. You know, next time you want to go challenge your cross-border strategy, say, are you guys also reducing your prices or playing the game in the local market? Are you leveraging those seasonal sales that are happening in that local country? Okay. Next thing I gotta say is seasons. Of course, you don't want to be selling your products, you know, out of season. If you're going, you know, in the southern hemisphere, it might be a totally different climate at that time. Payment methods. So I briefly talked about this one before. But there's significant preferences actually, depending on the market. I gave you the example already with PayPal in Germany, but they're also using a solution called Sofort. There's iDeal in the Netherlands, and who didn't know, right? Alipay in China. All right, these are ways that people are preferring to pay rather than just putting in their credit card on your website. All right, and of course, I mean, this is really no need to stress this point, but mobile friendly, right, guys? This is starting to become the norm in the EU. Local currencies, okay? We're seeing on our side on Lengow is that people are getting higher sales. They're getting better results when they're telling their potential new customer that they can pay in their local currency, okay? And then my last 2 points are refunds and delivery times. And perhaps we might have a couple of guys who are a little bit more experts on this subject when it comes to the management of it. But refunds, I just talked to someone in Germany, and this was eye-opening, but they're like, listen, there's a whole culture when it comes to refunds in Germany. In fact, you'll have a consumer who will go ahead and buy the same product, but 3 times. Why? Because they feel it's more efficient to just buy the same product in 3 different sizes and just go ahead and return the 2 other ones that don't fit, and it doesn't cost them anything to refund it. So there are marketplaces that offer that, you know, free return, but I think that's also important for a brand or a company or a retailer such as yourself to take that into consideration. Why? Because there are still companies out there who are charging clients a return fee, you know, to send them that package back, whatever the cost may be, you know, 15 or 20 euros, that costs. And if you think about it, you're just adding that one extra layer for, you know, potentially a bad experience. I remember talking to, you know, a young girl who bought something from, I'm not going to mention the brand, right? But they bought something on a website and they were demanding for them to, you know, pay for that delivery to return it back to the company. And it's like, yeah, but I'm buying it from you and, well, I'm not happy with your product, you know. Try to alleviate that, I would, you know, in your whole experience for the customer journey, okay? And yeah, the last one is delivery time. So different countries, and I know, Mike, you were talking about this as well, as far as the method of delivery. And it is true, actually, in France, you know, from what I've learned is they really are preferring that click and collect ideology where you ship something from the brand or the website and it gets delivered to kind of a focal point in the city, and they just go, you know, pick it up there with their identification card. It's super popular. I don't know why. Personally, I prefer it to get dropped off at my house. But this is the normal trend, so to say, in France. It's also the same as well that I'm seeing in Germany, and perhaps also UK, you guys could say the same with this click and collect type of method. But what we're seeing actually in Spain is that about 66% of consumers are choosing to have their delivery option going, you know, to the store itself or even to a workplace and pick it up from there. But, you know, that's what I got to say. I know it's a long list, guys, but that just shows you how complex it is really to go, you know, cross border. And it's not just as simple as, okay, hey, I'm going to go on Amazon in Germany, France, or Portugal, and just, you know, we'll have fun and see how it works.
Thanks for that, Max. As you mentioned, yes, a bit of a long list, but vitally important. Obviously, reach out to Max if you want to get in a little bit more detail about that, because I think there was a lot of really, really handy tips. I think for me, just buying things 3 times sounds like a pretty good idea to me. I always wing it and hope that I get the right one, and I never do. So maybe I should start adopting the German mentality of being a little bit more efficient. Mark, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, and you know, following on from Max's comments, you can't just launch and then rest on your laurels. You know, things do change, and even in the space of sort of VAT compliance, if we had this, you know, 3 years ago, everything was reasonably stable. But what we've seen, this year alone, both with Brexit and some of the reforms are sort of coming through, it's changing incredibly fast. So, even after you launch, you need to keep an eye on what's changing, how it impacts your business. Really look at automation where possible as well, which will lessen the burden on your business. And where you can, try and make it someone else's problem. If there are suppliers out there, if there are companies that will sort of take this on, allowing you to sort of focus on your core business and your strengths, it's just reducing the risk as well. So it's more about launch. And we talked about the kind of things you need to look at before you launch, but afterwards you need to keep an eye on it. There will be changes in how marketplaces react, and the VAT is just part of sort of the changing world.
Thanks, Mark. I think the one last point for me is, Max, you mentioned about delivery times and delivery expectations. I think the other one is duties from the delivery perspective, right? So the DDP or DAP or DDU, delivery duties. Who of us on this call have been stung by having to pay duties? I think that's absolutely something to consider to ensure success in that new market. Understand what's the expectation of the customer, and how are you going to communicate that to the carrier, who is ultimately going to be responsible for charging your consumer at the kind of acceptance stage of the delivery. Do you really want to make it an ugly experience and have someone wait and have to be stung with an unexpected charge? Or can you enable, through technology, a cleaner, more enjoyable way to finally receive your product? International delivery is obviously going to take longer. And I, for one, get really excited when I buy something internationally. I'm waiting for that product to arrive, and then I get stung with a bill, and it really takes the shine off a really nice experience when you're waiting for that international product. I bought some merchandise of a brand in the US, a band, and I kind of forgave them because it's a small band, it's independent, but it really was not enjoyable experience to have to pay that at the end. But if you're a brand that's really trying to create a message about how reliable and trustworthy you are, I think communicating that to the end consumer can really help drive more loyalty. E-commerce shoppers are fickle; they've got a lot of choice, so make it as easy and enjoyable as possible to shop with you. So, Mark, it's that question. It's that time. How has Brexit changed the game?
Yeah, quite a lot really. And just to sort of follow on from your point about customer experience, it is so important. There's been a huge rise in unhappy e-com customers. Certainly, I think through us all being on lockdown and e-com sort of rising, and it's so much harder to find new customers than to maintain your existing base as well. So there's been a huge amount of focus on that customer experience and improving that customer experience. And one thing we did find with Brexit, and what it did after all the confusion and lack of clarity, I think in the early days, it forced businesses to think differently. Some of the areas I sort of touched on at the very beginning with HS classification, so commodity codes, managing sort of duties and tariffs as well. You mentioned Incoterms with DDP versus DUP, something that a lot of European businesses never really thought about before. And I think that as companies really get their head around it, they put process in place, they put automation in place, then why stop at the EU? A lot of those processes are actually sort of open the market further afield as well. And, we are seeing businesses that were typically European really sort of extending their footprint into other areas. And yeah, I've had the same sort of experience where bought something internationally. I didn't really look at the Incoterms with sort of DUP, where I got a customs form as well. It was terrible. I'll never shop from that again. And businesses appreciate this. They are moving to the DDP model, where everything is visible up front. Their customers know what to expect. There is an option to sort of pay all the duty, so they're getting their product in a much more seamless way as well. And I think that customer experience really does. It's almost the essential part of understanding the customer experience in the various markets, and then working out what needs to be done on that. But to come back to sort of the Brexit piece, yes, it was confusing. It still is confusing for many people, and there are other reforms in place as well, and people blur the two. But it really has, if they get it right, opened the market up further than they were probably looking at before.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we think back to that January of this year and the craziness for e-commerce merchants and particularly for carriers. There was, parcels going back, going to the border, coming back, paperwork not filled out correctly. And I think some of that experience has really turned a lot of domestic or UK retailers off the idea of shipping internationally, which is a real shame. It's really, it's closed off a huge amount of opportunity and new markets for those brands. But I think for the retailers on this call, I think that shows that there is potentially an opportunity. There's potentially less competition from those brands that were traditionally selling internationally. A lot of them have turned it off, have walked away because they were turned off by the idea, or they weren't set up to be able to communicate the right details to the carrier or to the border, which leaves the market somewhat open for you to go and explore if you are able to hit the reset button, understand what's needed, speak to specialists, particularly like Avalara, who particular specialty in cross-border that can really help you. I think there's also been a drive from the technology companies like ourselves to have to invest in our technology to ensure that we can enable small and large retailers to ship internationally. It was as much of a shock to us as it was to our customers, but there was a demand from our customers that we were one step ahead of the game and were able to kind of keep things switched on, and they were able to continue doing what they needed to do and ship internationally. So in a funny way, it's driven more competitiveness and improvement from technology companies. And my suggestion would be leverage that, have a look at the market, see which technology companies have done a good job and that can really help you do internationalization as efficiently and effectively as possible. Mark, coming back to yourself, obviously there's more EU VAT regulations that are coming to play at the beginning of July. Can you help businesses make sense of it, and what are some of the key changes that are happening?
So they were announced earlier in the year, but we've come around to the 1st of July where there's some new e-commerce reforms as well. And it was sort of really, it was framed in a simplification. With the sort of removal of some of the free trade agreements, it got very complicated for merchants. So they looked at how could it be, lessen the burden on those companies as well. And they came up with a scheme called the Import One-Stop Shop, so IOS as well. And I can even see there's a question that's coming about this, which I'll try and help as I go through this. And really what it was really allowing people to get registered for a single registration in Europe, and they could then sell across all 27 member states, because some of the changes that happened with removing the low value consignment and one or two other things meant that typical business practice would mean that they'd have to get registered wherever they make sales and all the rest of it, and it would have got quite difficult for certain merchants. Now, one of the things is it's sort of, when we look at the IOS, it's voluntary. It will suit a lot of businesses. It won't suit everybody. And for all the merchants I speak to, no two companies are the same. They're doing things differently. They're moving stock in different ways through different areas, and it's not just it will suit everybody, and that's why it's always good for a conversation. But one of the things that Avalara can help with from the IS point of view, I sort of break it down into four main areas. There's getting registered, and that's the first thing you need to do. You need to get registration for IOS. It's then an intermediary, and HMRC went backwards and forwards really on whether you need an intermediary or not. But this is someone who represents your business to handle some of those payments as well. It's a bit like a fiscal rep in the old world, but again, it was an idea as part of simplification. And then there's the actual the filing. you're collecting VAT, you also need to do sort of the filing as part of that, and it's really how you manage that. And then the payment piece as well. So Avalara can sort of cover all four areas. And to come back to the question we've been asked about really how can this be sort of automated, whether through the ecom platform or wherever, that comes down to where is the data stored. In order to sort of drive the compliance, certainly from our side, there are certain bits of data that we need. Sometimes that's in the ecom platform, some that's in a billing system. I know that even with the ShipStation platform, a lot of the data is there as well. So when we go into this conversation, it's what model first fits, and then where do we get the data in order to drive the compliance piece as well. But we're all about automating this. We're all about reducing the risk. There is a lot that can be automated when it comes to VAT. There are certain things that can't. Getting registered and all the rest of it. It's really a people problem as well. But I think the whole iOS changes. It's the thing that I'm talking most about because it impacts so many businesses. But really, it was there to make everybody's life easy. But like with all of these things, there's an element of getting up to speed before people really understand the benefits.
That's great. Thanks, Mark. I've also seen a couple of questions come in, and we'll make sure to answer them at the Q&A just at the end. Thank you very much. Feel free to pop in anything you'd like onto the chat as we go. Next question. So what technology, Max, do you need on board to expand into new markets?
Another good question. It's really important for you guys to equip yourselves with the right technology. And of course, an e-commerce automation platform really will allow you to connect and synchronize your tools to make them work together more efficiently. And to really truly manage and simplify your business when you are going cross-border, it is super important to have your product and order information shared between the systems and tools, okay? I'll give you an example. Amazon's back office, okay, so for you to upload your information in one country is going to be different for another country. So imagine you're a company who's going on Amazon UK, Amazon France, and Amazon Germany. You're going to have to put in your product information perhaps now 3 times, okay? And that's just for one marketplace. We've been giving you so many tips now to look for the more niche marketplaces. So only multiply it that many times. These are just the tedious tasks that are going to eat up your time once you start going cross-border to update the product information, the inventory on all across these channels, all right? That's where, that's where Lengow comes into play, okay? It's really making it easy for you guys to automate your e-commerce tasks that are going to eat up your daily lives. For you to easily update one time your product information, which will then be dispersed across all the marketplaces. Think about that, all right? But also the main purpose, like I said before, is to have all the systems and tools work together. So with Lengow's tool, you're able to enrich your e-commerce platform's product data with equipping it with Shopify, a PrestaShop, a Magento, Shopware, right? To adjust your prices by equipping it with a Parley or a pricing assistant or an Amazon. Okay, and then also, and we talked about this numerous times already, giving it that local feel, you're also able to integrate TextMaster, which is a company that's helping, businesses and brands able to go ahead with an international strategy by translating their text on a more personal way, not like a Google Translate. That's what I got for you guys.
Thanks, Max. And same question to you, Mark.
Yeah, as I mentioned, Avalara is a technology company. It's really sort of our bread and butter of really how we manage the compliance piece as well. The way we do this is really starting with the right rate, and even across Europe, you can get 0 rated items all the way up to 27% as well, and then you throw on top of that some of the new customs and duties that should be applied as you trade internationally. It's all about automating that. And to come back to that customer experience piece, it has to be integrated into the platforms so the person knows what they're paying. So it's about that integrated technology. It's about giving the right rate, VAT, but also with the duties to really help customers with an informed decision before purchase. And that is an essential part of this, and it can only be done with technology. And if we extend that out, I know we're not necessarily talking about the US, But the US has 14,000 different tax jurisdictions. The conversation there always starts with what rate do I charge, because it can be so complex. With VAT, finding out the right rate is typically easier. But then all the reporting side, and to go back to sort of Max's point at the beginning with different languages, with VAT, it's different forms, different jurisdictions that have to be paid in different ways. And reducing the risk either through technology or service where required really reduces the impact and risk of the international trade.
Thanks, Mark. I've heard you say that 14,000 tax. You have to remind me the wording, that quote before. What's the wording?
Yeah, 14,000 different tax jurisdictions. I think I did see one report, that's for sales tax. I think if you throw in some of the other excise tax and all the various other ones, it was up in the, I think 100,000. I think there were about 280,000 changes last year alone in the US. It's just, it takes the complexity to a whole new level or a different level.
Yeah, it blows my mind every time I hear it. And I think, building on what the two of them have said, if you want to kind of grow internationally, absolutely, from a technology perspective, you need to speak to Lengow and Avalara, I think, to really help understand and go through that minefield of marketplaces and tax jurisdictions. I can't even pronounce it; it's that hard. You need an expert, and I think it comes back to that old adage of growth creates complexity, and then complexity kills growth. The opportunity to grow internationally gives you access to a whole load of new markets, and new opportunities for revenue, fantastic, but potentially a whole load of new headaches. And that's why you really need to speak to experts, or ideally put technology to play on your behalf to enable that kind of automation to power your business. The likelihood that you can just throw people at the problem and that be cost effective is pretty low. There are other retailers who have walked this road before you and have benefited from the expertise of technology companies like the two we have, or like the three of us really. And I would massively recommend using our expertise to help you. I think from my perspective, from a technology, it's really ensuring that you have a tech that can communicate the right cross-border documentation as efficiently, as effectively as possible. So for us, we enable retailers of all shapes and sizes to generate shipping labels. It seems like a pretty basic thing to be able to do, but really when it comes down to it, selecting the right carrier service, generating the right customs details and the right shipping label with the correct carrier is an incredibly complex thing to do. If you look at it, really, most carriers will have their specialist lanes, whether it's domestic, whether it's a certain weight, a certain value, a certain part of the world, or a certain speed. And if you want to be able to, attract merchant or new customers in all different parts of the world, then really having a multi-carrier strategy is absolutely going to help you. Maybe a local carrier for your domestic parcels, and then an express for your international, or maybe a slower route for the less high value or further distanced customers is absolutely worth looking at. And anyone who's going through the headache of manually keying in customer details to generate shipping labels or customs declarations, where human error can come into play and cause all sorts of problems at the border, will know that actually just speaking to a technology company that can enable this very quickly and efficiently and cost effectively can really help you. So we're at time for our Q&A, but I'd like the guys, Max, Mark, just to kind of give the audience a couple of key takeaways before we go into our audience Q&A. Max, can you start?
Yeah, I'll kick this one off. I'll kick off the conclusion. So Lengow's key takeaways for you guys. All right. Research and know your markets as well as you know your own. All right. Choose the right channels for your brand and products and take care to adapt to each and every one of them. All right. And finally, make things easier on yourself by automating those tasks and to help you launch onto new channels quickly and easily to get your brand known across many markets. And that's all I got to say again.
Thanks, Max. And for yourself, Mark.
Yeah, I think it's a case of just don't panic. Don't be scared of the tax regulations. It's a case of really understand, get the right guidance, and we can certainly support you with that. I look at automation with HS codes, which are essential. Certainly as you use a ShipStation, they need that to drive the customs declaration as well. And then do you need fiscal rep, intermediary? Where do you get registered? All of these. We've got some fantastic information on our website, our blogs. But it's also a case of just let me know and ask, and we can sort of talk through your business and really what we'd recommend to really sort of solve a lot of this.
And then for myself, my key takeaway will really be do things in advance, be prepared. A lot of people invest heavily in making the front of their business look incredible to sell their product, but the back end is pretty ugly sometimes. And ideally, have the back of your business look as good as the front is. So have everything prepared, invest in technology, and don't leave it to the last minute when you have orders piling up to start thinking about how you automate some of these processes. So I hope that was valuable. There was quite a lot in there. And as I said at the beginning, feel free to contact any one of us for further details. We do have a couple of questions from the audience. There is one here from an Italian viewer. So ciao to our Italian viewer, and best of luck in the football tonight. The question is after-sales customer service part of the options to consider to expand internationally? Who would like to take this?
I can just, add a piece of knowledge based on, my experience with the marketplaces and what they're demanding. Yes, and I think I touched on it very briefly that, there are certain marketplaces that are requiring for you to have customer support in the local language. I think that only behooves you to support, your consumers with that experience. That doesn't mean that there's certain marketplaces that don't require it, but hey, is that going to give you the right brand image that you're looking to have, So again, it really depends on the marketplace. Perhaps it also depends on the market that you're in. I know that there are certain countries that, in the Nordics, for example, by all means, they might be fine with English, okay? But you go to Southern Europe, I'm sure you know yourself, being in Italy, the English level might not be as good. So when it comes to, being an international brand or retailer, really you're going to need to offer a local language as a support, okay?
Yeah, and I think from a delivery perspective, that's absolutely true again. If there is a potential requirement for returns, there needs to be some kind of after-sales customer service who can communicate those details to that end consumer. Ideally, as Max said, in local language, potentially in time zone as well.
Yeah,
it's not always pretty if it's middle of the night, and can you rely on a third party to help you with that potentially? But absolutely, if it's impossible to communicate with the brand in the time zone and language that you would expect, and I think when we communicate with American brands, I would expect to do that in the afternoon, and that's okay. But if that market does not accept that, maybe it's a Chinese market and they do not accept the time zones that you operate in, you need to work around that, work with a third party, employ local people, whatever it needs to be, to ensure that, as I said earlier, the fickle customer doesn't leave you. When you paid all that money to win that business, you need to make sure that you invest in maintaining it and driving it and improving that experience.
Great point, Mike.
Cool. So the final one it's from an anonymous attendee saying, "Can someone from Avalara contact me?" Yes, please. Absolutely, we'd like to contact you. If we could, feel free to reach out to Mark. I guess is that right, Mark?
Yeah. I'd start with me. I can bring in teams based on your needs. It'll be mark.carpenter@avalara.com. More than happy to pick that up and sort of discuss your needs, because as I said, no two businesses are the same. And also, as a sort of a point as well, as people are looking at their international expansion, one of the things we touched on is really the DDP versus DUP, and we actually have a really good guide on this alongside ShipStation as well, to really talk through what this means, what they have to do, and that's a really good bit of content to really sort of get your head around is this right for you? Is this right for your business? And what has to happen as well? So, if you're interested in that as well, please let us know.
Yeah, I also have one thing to mention when it comes to, I find it quite a useful tool. It's on the Lengow's website. It's called our Marketplace Finder. And this will allow you to filter very nicely, by the sector that you're in, the industry that you're active in, to see which marketplaces are in that country. The ones that, that you might not have thought about before, like a La Redoute or a Fnac. Take a look at it. Honestly, it's free to use. You'll get inspired. You'll be able to then go onto the marketplace's website, confirm that it's right for your brand. And then I'm sure somewhere on the marketplace website, you'll have a client form for you guys to register up on. Okay. But definitely a good tip for you guys to use. Okay.
Thank you. Max, Mark, any kind of final points or questions that you had before we finish up today?
Just for my point, thank you for everybody who joined as well. I hope you sort of got something from it as well. There's a lot of uncertainty there, but I think certainly between Avalara on the tax side and then Mike and Max in their respective areas, it's a really strong proposition to make the next step or to improve the way you're currently looking at it as well.
Yeah, if I had to add one last point, I'd say globalization's here. Okay. If you're not playing with the game, you're going to be left behind. So it's time to get ready and definitely, take into consideration the tools and the solutions of whom is present in this conversation today to leverage this factor to allow you to permit you to go global. Okay.
That's great. Thanks very much for attending. Really appreciate your time. If you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to any of us. We'll be sure to help you. Thanks very much.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
Cheers.